Hi, everyone. Welcome to Your Bestselling Book and the Story Cure. Today, we are talking to Megan Williams. Megan Williams is one of my favorite people in the publishing world, hands down, love her to pieces. We met through working together, so we didn't know each other previously, but I came across her company, the self-publishing agency, TSPA, when I wrote about her for Forbes a few years back. And Megan Williams is the founding CEO of TSPA, and they are an absolute stellar self-publishing, hybrid publishing, if you want to call that. We'll get into that. We'll talk about what's self-publishing, what's hybrid publishing, what's the difference. And I've sent so many clients her way because her team genuinely cares. They are heart-driven, purpose-driven people. So thank you for being here, Megan.
Thank you, May May. The sentiment is the same. I feel like the start, having you feature TSPA on Forbes was probably like a career highlight thus far. And then I'm thrilled at our partnership and the conversations that we've had in the past few years. It's been great.
Yeah. And we always are giving each other the inside scoop on the industry. So I'm
It was
so
fun.
thrilled to have you here today. But I really want to dive in and start asking you questions because I will tell you that now it's been almost 30 years. Yes, that dates me.
But
Back
you're
in the
only like
dinosaur
25.
age.
How did
I
that
know.
work?
How's that possible? um, the self-publishing didn't exist when I got started, right? I mean, like it wasn't a thing. It was like you either went for the gold and you got a deal with the big five New York publishing house, or maybe an indie press, like a university press or a spiritual press, or it was done. That was it. That was your only hope. And then there started to be this rise in self-publishing, hybrid publishing. And so I'd love to just start with you giving us your like 10,000 foot view, or meters, I should say, since you're in Canada. Um,
I don't.
um, what do you see happening in the industry right now?
Uh, I think it's picking up speed a little bit because I think AI is helping people. I mean, we all know what it like what used to be even 3 years ago, we're gonna like, I need to Google a question I have about publishing. And now we're able to just like ask ChatGPT a question and something can come up faster with faster resources and it's an aggregate of all this information. So I feel like people's education is picking up speed as well as the with like businesses like ours and successful authors who have self-published, there's a lot more information and access to like what is happening in the world. So the things are moving faster and people's understanding and comprehension is going a lot faster. So at 10,000 feet, what's happening is that we still have the traditional publishing world, which is things that we think about in the movies that are, publishing world offers large advance to author takes book to market, publishing house makes all the money, but the movie makes us believe that that's a full-time job for the author, and now they have millions of dollars, and where,
Yeah, they travel the world or live in a gorgeous Manhattan apartment and buy
yes,
$1,000 shoes.
exactly. Carrie Bradshaw is
Yep.
still like quintessential, like this is what the publishing world does for all of us. And then and then there's this world of hybrid publishing, and I feel like I still have the hope and the anticipation that this part of the industry, as people continue to get smarter, I do believe that this part of the world may, or this part of the industry may die off a little bit, the smarter people become and the more educated they become. Because in the world of hybrid publishing, what that means is basically you are paying a company a large sum of money to be your publisher. And then when the book goes to market, you are actually splitting the revenue with them. So in some cases, it can be shared risk. In many cases, and most cases that we see, it's very low risk for the person you're paying, and yet they are still profiting once the author goes to market. Then there is self-publishing, which is the world that we play in, which is, I think people um it depending on the standards that people uphold. Self-publishing can be I did my own book, I designed it on Canva, and then I uploaded it, and then I'm going to see how it's going. That's like the most like rudimentary like option of self-publishing. We kind of the self-publishing agency, we are taking the best of the trade publishing world, so the standards that the industry upholds, and we're applying it to the world of self-publishing. So people will hire us to walk them through what the trades are doing. And then when their book goes to market, because the author has made all the investment, then they will be able to make all of the money in the market. So that's a really like high level of like what's happening. I feel like this hybrid world though is before it feels like it's building, but people are also starting to question it a little bit because what happens is in the trade, it sounds really appealing when you enter, and then on once your book is in on the market for 5 years, you're like, why am I still paying a company money for a book that they aren't marketing anymore? So I feel like that part of the industry, people like, as I said in the beginning, the education of people is starting to shift what they're looking for, I think. Does that answer your question?
It does. No, that was fantastic because that is the number one question that I get to this day in my job for 30 years, over and over again. Like, how do I get a traditional publishing deal? What's the difference between that and self-publishing? What is hybrid publishing? Like, should I publish with Forbes Books? Because that's a big brand name, even though I'm going to pay them an arm and a leg for that brand. Should I do it myself? Like, just so much confusion. And I often refer to it as the Wild West because I
Yeah.
know for a fact that there are bad actors out there. And I have had clients come to me who forked over like 10 or 20 grand and got nothing out of it.
Well, it's an unregulated industry, right? So the people that you, it's, I mean, the people that you're investigating, like if they have a splashy website and, have paid for 20,000 Instagram followers, if you don't know what you're looking for, it's very hard to know who is one of the bad actors and what are you going to get. So we can talk today about like how to look into like how to decipher what is the right fit for you as an author, and then also like how do you figure out what company is going to make your book legitimate and professionally publish it, regardless whether it's a traditional professional publisher or a self-publisher like us.
Well, let's dive right into that. I mean, I have other questions, but let's explore that. I mean, first of all, let's start with the fork in the road. I often present people right from the beginning, right? Because they'll come to me for help writing. I'm like, well, are we writing a book proposal to pitch to literary agents and publishers, or are we writing the whole book because you're going to self-publish it? What do you tell people? Like, how did they even begin to make that choice?
I think it's a good question. I used to say, um, does it matter if somebody tell if like would it matter to you if your book was released in 4 years from now, or would it matter? Like I think we can talk about timing as a starting point.
We can definitely talk about timing. We're talking like my agent says minimum 2 years till the book is on the shelves, minimum right now with traditional publishing.
Oh, and that sounds like that's like a speed to market. That means that was like a right time, right place kind of thing. So then so the next thing so let's say in that fork of the road, we're just talking about timing. The next question has to be is like, what do they think happens? If they're like, I don't really mind about the timing part. It could happen now, I could wait. Then I want to always go through like, what is it about a traditional publishing situation that you feel would work well for you? So if they understand what traditional publishing works or looks like, then they can say, "Oh, I just don't want to pay for my own editor and designer." Well, if that's the case, then traditional is the way to explore, right?
Or I can't afford to, right? Like
Yes.
I do not have $10,000 to invest.
Yeah, and that's fine, and then that's probably the right pursuit. And knowing that if they go and they get a traditional publishing deal, somebody else is going to pay for the editor and the designer and the printer. It, however, doesn't mean that you're going to make money once the book goes to market. So you're kind of just washing the whole thing. You're like, I'm going to take my idea, I'm going to give it to someone else so they can put it out into the world, and maybe I'll make a couple $1,000s off of book sales. Maybe I'll make $10,000, but it's not life-changing money. Let's put it that way. But if somebody's like, I don't mind if like I don't mind investing if the fit is right. So the next kind of questions authors have to ask themselves when they're considering trade publishing or self-publishing, we're talking about that idea of like, what do they know? And then when people are like, well, I don't want to deal with any book marketing. That's a one that we're hearing a lot right now.
Oh my
Authors are
God,
like,
I
I
hear
don't want
that
to deal
all
with
the
any book
time,
marketing. And you're
Megan.
like,
Yeah.
then like I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to like upset you and your whole vision because it doesn't matter whether you trade publish or self-publish. The expectation is that authors are marketing themselves. Like that is, it's a across the board blanket statement. Authors must be able to market themselves and their story. And people,
Yeah,
and
this is the other movie myth, as I call it, like aside from Carrie Bradshaw with her $1,000 Manila Blahniks, is the author getting sent on a world book tour by their publishing company. I'm like,
yes,
honey, that does not exist at
no.
all. Zero.
Like maybe if you're the Obamas, like maybe, but like real niche job that they had, right? So you're not, it's pretty hard to find that.
They're going to get you a couple interviews on like the Today Show and CNN.
Yeah.
They're really not going to send you on a world tour. They're not.
No, and the thing is that so much of the in when we think about what book marketing is going to look like, there's two things. Publishers, like everybody wants to make money. Authors want to make money and publishers want to make money. So we hear so many scenarios where publishers will be watching, be like, how many followers and what kind of audience and what kind of platform does that author already have? And then, now we'll make an offer because we can see that maybe they're already going to make us some money. And there's a great interview actually. I mean, so many people listen to Smartless, the podcast, and Jelly Roll. It was recently interviewed, and he talks about the music industry being very similar. Like if you run the numbers, people are ready to like jump onto a bandwagon when things are already going very well. And that's not dissimilar to the publishing industry. We've got like connections in the big five publishers, and it's really fun to hear some of them saying like we love an emerging writer or we're looking for these types of things. But even when they are looking for that, they are looking for like what kind of presence, what is an emerging writer actually doing? Are they sitting with their fingerless gloves in like a dark room writing all the time? Because that person doesn't sell.
Oh
So
my God. So story on that is recently was talking to my literary agent who's been in the industry for 40 years and knows everyone and lives in New York City and like lives and breathes this. And she's like, no, I absolutely cannot sell anything, period, hands down, today, where you don't have hundreds of thousands of followers.
wow.
That was her direct quote a week
Wow.
ago.
Okay.
Hundreds of thousands of followers. She's like, otherwise, I cannot sell it. And I'm sure there are exceptions to that rule, but that is what she's seeing.
Yeah, and
And
the tough part, as you
so
said,
interesting.
in that observation is really interesting. It's very helpful to have that insider information because and for everybody listening, what that actually
Yeah,
means is that she's taking books to these big publishers and they're coming back with her. They're like, unless they have a following, we're not going to buy it.
that's it.
And that feels really discouraging, I think, for people but what I want to, and what you and I you and I always talk about this is that sometimes that feels like that's creating a default option to self-publishing. Like, oh, I couldn't get a traditional publisher because I don't have hundreds of thousands of followers, so therefore I'll have to self-publish. But actually what it's doing is that they're like pulling away into a different world that feels disingenuous if that's all they're pursuing, right? Because it doesn't, and let's be generous to the big five publishers. Their budgets are down. They have mandates that they're trying to hit. So they're like, in order to be able to fund this very large cruise ship and pay for everyone's salary, we actually can only afford like hundreds of thousands of people to know about a book. Because otherwise, even if it's the best written book of the year, we actually can't sell it. It's too hard right now. Anyhow.
Absolutely love that you said that. It sets up the dynamic of the default when it's not. There are brilliant people, and maybe we can shift the conversation out of that, like Seth
Yeah.
Godin, like Tim Ferriss, like James Clear, if you've heard those names,
Yes.
who are like, why should I give the publishing house all the money?
Yeah. And the publishing house is like, please, can you give us all of the money?
Yeah,
We have a lot of people's jobs to pay for. Like,
right.
and so it has, and so I hope that like in the more people listen to conversations like ours, is the recognition that this is actually just business decisions. This isn't anything about like how good your writing is or how like interesting you are as a storyteller or what your own personal, it really is what the industry like they're it's what they're trying to make for their bottom line. So therefore, it's not actually personal. It's just business on their front. If they can't sell it, then they need like big hitters. So which brings us into like people that, but does that make us as writers, does that mean that we're like, well, I guess that means that I shouldn't write my book then because if nothing will sell, then because that's actually not the case, is it?
No, not at all. So let's talk about that because there now we start to go down the, hey, this is actually a really attractive option and one that I might choose even if I could get a traditional publisher. So what
Yes.
are the reasons for that?
Well, the people who are choosing to self-publish know that they have to market their book anyways. And they also know they're like, I want complete autonomy. I don't want somebody to be like, you know what, could you actually just change that? Like that we don't know like if people are going to really resonate with that chapter. And you're like, this is a memoir. What do you mean if they're not going to resonate with that chapter? It's a life. So, and then the other part is that also recognizing that sometimes, and this happened for my book, and I know it happens for a lot of authors, something will be happening in their business or their lives, and they're like, if I this needs to kind of get to market soon because I have an audience that's ready for this content. And when you have that feeling, when you decide to self-publish, it's almost like being like, I can get this business going now. Why would I wait for someone to say, maybe in 2 years? Well, sit in the waiting room. Maybe in 2 years, your information will still be relevant, and then you can put it to market. Good luck. So I think for people who are looking to like really elevate, whether that's a business, a brand, they want their story out because it's timely. And sometimes people just need a story out because it's in their body and it's not leaving them, so they need it out. You can, when you self-publish, you can get that out within a year to 15 months. It can be on bestseller lists. It can start, you can make your investment back. It can be in bookstores. It can have international distribution. All of that is possible in the world of self-publishing if you know what you're doing. So you can kind of have the best of both worlds. Just one's a little bit faster and one's putting yourself in the author room, whereas the other may be an invitation to just sit in the waiting room with a maybe.
These are all such excellent points. And I think that I'm so happy you brought up, well, I mean, the timing is number one. I mean, I just can't tell you how many people are like, no, I want a traditional publishing deal. I'm like, really? 2.5 years, baby?
Yeah,
Like,
minimum. Yeah.
like minimum. And then they're like, oh, okay, well, maybe not. And then number two is the money because, heck, you do have to invest some to self-publish, which we can
Yeah.
talk about some of those numbers. You got to lay some money down, but then you are recuperating 100% on the back end. Okay, that adds up fast. Like Dr.
Yeah.
Stephanie Cawthon, who you know and love, who did the first cohort of Your
Yeah.
Bestselling Book, published with Megan at TSPA, recouped her investment in 3 months. And it's not like her book is some runaway gargantuan bestseller. I mean, Disability is Human is it's wonderful and it's doing well, but she recouped her investment in 3 months.
Yeah. And which is incredible. And then the other, and to add to that, we see time and time again, like it is different for everybody, but it is true for everybody that publishing a book changes people's lives because it puts you in rooms, it puts you in conversations, and it puts you in front of opportunities that you might have not even seen for yourself, or you might have not even known you were eligible for until your book comes to market. And that is true across genre. And that's true for memoir, that's true for business books. The thing it what changes your life, it's different for everybody. We have people who, I mean, as you know, like Dr. Stephanie was all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, and now my book is available at the Stanford bookstore." And you're like,
Right.
that's a pretty big deal. That's a pretty big audience and a pretty big room to be in front of. And then you've got people who maybe they aren't, their sales aren't changing, but all we have an author who wrote a poetry collection, and she's like, I just got a job promotion because somebody on my team knew that I had written a book and they now recognize that I like can write. And I wasn't, so she's like, now I got a promotion. My job is actually easier than what it was. And it's not actually directly related to her book sales, but it's because what it showed the people in her network what she's capable of. So when
That
we
is
talk about,
so awesome.
yeah,
And then
so the
there's the people
spectrum
who
is
say,
very big, right?
and then there's the people who tell me, look, I don't even care about sales. This book is my calling card. I'm a coach. I have a program, right? So
Yep.
whether it's health and wellness, psychology, happiness, like you name it, business, I have a program. I'm a coach. I'm a consultant. And I get 100% of my clients because of my book. I've had people tell me that 100%. So they're like, I give the book away for free.
Right. Because what helps you pull away from the pack, right? I'm an author. I'm a best-selling author. I've been invited to TED. I've been invited to Southwest by Southwest. My book was made into a movie. Like there's so many things out there that happen after your book publishes that when we go back to that conversation about which route to choose and how does that timing feel, it's like, well, how fast do you want your life to change?
I love that. Okay. And now I want to talk about the flip side, which is how the industry or the
Mm,
outside forces perceive it, right? So I think that a lot of people, you can kind of get them through that stumbling block of like, okay, I can get over the ego hit of, I didn't get a publishing deal because I realized that the reframe is I want independence, financial freedom, control, and speed. Okay,
yeah.
done. However, how are other people going to see that? Like, does it seem schmarmy? Does it seem schlocky? Can I not win awards? Can I not make bestseller lists? Talk to us about that side of the equation.
Yeah. So most of the time what we do with our authors is we set authors up with their own imprint. So meaning they ultimately um, they publish their book under you can choose to publish under TSPA. You can choose to publish under like your best-selling book if you wanted to. But in many cases, like we encourage authors, especially when they have their own businesses, to we set them up with a brand new imprint. So therefore, when the copyright information shows, it will say, you know, published and the copyright belongs to like Raincoast, media or something. Or you can change, you can create your own imprint. So therefore, the perception publicly should never be I mean, the standard of the book should be fantastic, but the perception publicly should never be that of like, oh, you self-published. Like that, so we try and make sure that authors feel really comfortable with the imprint and the information that their book shows, because we just don't want there to be that anybody kind of discrediting the book because their knowledge of what self-publishing is sort of puts them behind the start line, if that makes sense.
It's
So
dated, it's outdated, which is
it
fair.
is,
I mean,
and
like, I'm not going to blame people for that. That's normal, right?
yeah, and I think, I mean, you and I and Kieran have talked about this. Like, I think the publishing industry will eventually catch up to what the music industry has already done. Because in the music industry is like, oh my God, they're an indie artist. Like, they exploded. They did the whole thing themselves. Like, we give a lot of credit to musicians who were able to bankroll their album and it became successful and they have like this whole niche following. The publishing industry, that's actually no different. I just think we haven't caught up there where, consumers or like people who are looking be like, oh, did you self-publish it? I think they just don't have they haven't drawn that parallel yet. And they're not giving credit because actually for an author to self-publish a book, it requires a tremendous amount of like entrepreneurial support. So you kind of like I mean, it's a very impressive thing to do because you're not just sitting there having somebody tell you what the plan is for you. Rather, you're going after and getting it. So,
What about awards and bestseller lists? Like, are you excluded from those if you self-publish?
no, definitely not awards. I mean, there's a lot of like, again, it's unregulated, the awards, but I do think that so you can apply for tons of different awards. There's different categories as there are in all businesses. In the awards space in the literary world, you have like literary snobby awards, which can only be submitted by publishers and agents. And in those awards, you're kind of like you're subject to somebody who obviously has a traditional viewpoint about what the literary world should look like, and that's what wins people literary awards in the traditional sense. And then there's a lot of other like niche and more like Reader's Choice Awards. The Canadian Book Club Awards is one. I think there is a National Indie Author Award in the US. That's also a great one. So that you can absolutely become an award-winning author as a self-published author. And you just need to find awards that like legitimize that and just don't feel like money grabs. But that's the same in every industry. And
Every
in terms
industry is like
to
that.
answer your question about bestseller lists, the
Yeah.
same thing is very true. Like um, sales volume, I mean, becoming a bestseller on Amazon, there's a lot of people who will talk about gaming systems and like price dropping and all of that. But kind of like Amazon isn't dissimilar to lots of other bestseller lists where they're like, we're not going to tell you how many numbers you need. We're gonna we're just gonna decide based on your like sales volume if you are eligible to be a bestseller. The Amazon one is like it's a pretty comfortable best-selling list for authors to get it if you know what the strategy is to doing it. Awards like the LA Weekly or like best-selling lists like LA Weekly or like the New York Times one, as you know, is like that one changes. That one's a really elevated like list.
It's a very element. It's very mysterious. They never tell. They change it all the time. They don't want anybody gaming the system, so
And
it's fine.
I'm also curious now. I've read a few articles that they're like it's like the there's a lot of eyebrows being raised at like how much favoritism is being played by agents and publishers with the New York Times bestseller list because there's been sales numbers that people are like, hang on. If this book can sell 30,000 copies within a week and that's still not hitting the New York Times bestseller list, like what's happening here? So there's a lot of speculation about just how, call it, editorial that selection process is now. And I do think it's probably like all things in all industries. Like, I mean, if you've published there, with in your part of the industry 30 years ago, that list criteria has changed over the years. Everything
Yeah.
changes. So I was laughing, like, I feel like being a New York Times bestseller as you are when you were is almost like more valuable or has more street cred than if you were to become one now. Because now, if it's just a pick me list, then it doesn't feel the same. It's like getting your PhD before the internet. It's like a really big
Uh,
deal. Like
it's true. And I mean, it was a big deal. And also, these were people who didn't have hundreds of thousands of followers, right? So they really, like,
you,
it was really a tremendous accomplishment for them to hit the bestseller list.
yeah,
But anyway, okay, let's talk about the process. Let's switch gears a little bit. Like, I know why people here who are curious, who are like, what
yeah.
does it even mean? Like, what happens when I sign on with you? What do I do? What do I not do? How does it work? Can you take us through that at a level?
Yeah. Somebody would leave a program like Your Best-Selling Book or the Story Cure. They're ready. They've got a manuscript that is at least drafted. In some cases, at least an outline. And then they're like, okay, I feel like I need to know where this is going. So that's when you and I have a gentle handoff and somebody comes into TSPA. And what we're going to do is that we're going to take that manuscript, no matter whether it's in rough shape or if it's really well polished, depending what they've already done with you. And then if an author needs, we can bring in a proofreader or a developmental editor, whatever the author feels like they need. But it's very customized based on what an author is and their manuscript is going to need. The next
And they're
thing,
paying for that. They're paying for that a la carte, right? I just wanted to be clear on that. So, like, if
yeah,
they
yeah,
come into you with a totally polished and edited manuscript, and they just want then they don't do the editorial, or the opposite.
absolutely.
If they're like, "Help, I'm not quite there," then they can pay for that extra support.
Absolutely. And that's
Okay.
that's a little bit unique to our model is that
Hmm.
we don't want people to be paying for what they're not using. And the same goes for like we have book designers on our roster that we help sort of pair authors with. However, we've had cases where somebody's like, I found somebody on Fiverr or my nephew does book design. I'm going to have them do it. And that's a like that doesn't change our working relationship with an author. Our goal is to make sure that all of those standards, both editorial and design, are abiding by what exists in the trade world. So we're talking book specs, we're talking opportunities, we're like, how is this book going to get uploaded? Is it going to go to Amazon? Is it going to Barnes and Noble? Where's it going? What's your launch plan? And how many books do you want to buy, if at all? Like what, and we just work through their launch plans and what their opportunities are, um, in a really detail oriented and strategic way to bring it to market in a way that may, like, as we've already mentioned, Stephanie, so that she's so prepared when her book goes to market that any opportunities that she's getting called for, she's prepared for that because we're not just like, I hope you like it. Like, I hope it looks okay for you.
So do you guys do any of the marketing end of things at
Yes.
TSPA?
Yeah. So we try and work with authors all the way through to about like a month to 2 months after their book has launched. We want to make sure that they're comfortable with what their plan is, and because after they've launched, hopefully they have, hit a couple bestseller lists. They've practiced their talking points about what their book will offer readers, and they can be agile in how they market their book. And then they have a bookstore plan for and podcast tour plans. That's kind of happens right after launch, and that's what we set them off into the world with and tell them to fly. So
Yeah. And then the hustle doesn't stop there, but that's not our business. That's another, you got to keep going. Like,
yeah, I mean,
the journey doesn't end. It's the rest of your life. It's certainly the next 2 years, right? I mean, how long ago did your memoir come out? 15 years ago? 10, 15?
yeah, 10 years ago,
Okay.
this year. And then, I mean, for example, like last night, I was at an event and like sold $400 worth of books. So like,
That's
great.
amazing, Megan. Oh my
And,
God.
like, but it's kind of one of these things where like it will never stop, right? So you just kind of like just keep going, right? And sometimes when authors start to get discouraged, it can be in that, and this happens whether you're trade published or self-published. It's people in that 3 month, 4 month start getting discouraged, be like, oh, it's so much work. Can someone else do this work for me? But ultimately, if you have a plan, the way that we set authors up with, like, have a year-long plan so you don't burn out, so you're kind of stoking the fire at all times, and you can have like 10 years later just be like, oh, well, that was a nice little extra $400 that I didn't like. I mean, my investment is long recouped from my book. So now I'm just like, oh, it's $400. That's great. I'll like go visit.
Sweet.
I'll go visit May May in Hawaii.
There you go. Put that towards the Hawaii vacation fund, please, Megan.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, another thing that I often tell people is from the reader side of things. Like we've talked about the author end of the equation and getting over those mental hurdles. We've talked about like kind of the industry perception. And yeah, you're not going to be eligible for certain bestseller lists. You're not going to be eligible for certain awards, but you are eligible for most. And it doesn't really matter in the long run.
Ooh,
Is
can I just
the
say one thing I've
Yeah,
just
yeah,
remembered
yeah, yeah.
about that?
Oh
Is the
yeah, yeah.
other thing that we know about, so you're right. If you don't traditionally publish, there are some lists that you aren't eligible for. But the interesting part is the traditional published authors also are responsible for submitting some of their books because the publishers don't have budget for it. So we work with authors, for example, some who have traditional publishing deals, and they're still like, if I'm going to submit to that award, I have to pay for it. So in terms of eligibility, it's kind of interesting because it's still the authors who are advocating for, hey, publisher, can you please submit me for this? Because otherwise, like, or can I submit my own book for this? So anyways, so it's a different world out there when it's not just the publishers who are responsible for submitting. So anyways, sorry for
That
interrupting.
is so interesting. No, 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 no. I'm fascinated by that. And I think the final piece of the equation is the reader. And this is what I tell people. When is the last time you picked up a book? Let's say, especially it's been recommended to you by a friend or an email newsletter that you subscribe to, right? Because usually it's coming to you through some avenue like that. When is the last time you picked up that book and looked at the imprint and were like, oh, this wasn't published by Penguin Putnam?
Yeah. Mm.
Ever? Ever
Never.
in your entire life?
No. And I work like we work
Okay.
history, and I still never do it. What I'm most curious always is like, oh, where was this book printed? Like that's what I want to
Oh,
know.
that's so funny.
I can base it on like the quality of like how a book has been printed. I'll be very curious about the printing choice. So,
That's
but
so
like
funny.
never look at the publishing and print because the thing is when you know, like unless it says Penguin Random House or HarperCollins, like
Yeah,
it could honestly it could say like Floorboard Press, and I wouldn't know if that's just a small press or if that's
yeah,
like an independent. I wouldn't know that, and I'm not going to spend any time Googling that because that would be a waste of my time. Is it a good book
exactly.
or is
Who
it not?
cares? What else matters? All right.
Yeah.
What else do we need to know? What am I missing here? What else do you usually get questions about?
I think as people are exploring their options, I would say consider when you're exploring publishing options, watch for people or support people who will talk about taking out Google ads or Meta ads, and looking for kind of like the bells and whistle expenses. That feels like something I am hearing a little bit more of where other publishers will say, "Oh, but we're gonna, run ads for you on Amazon, etc." And what I am cautious about is that when was the last time you even got targeted a book from Google or Amazon and they're like, "Yes, that's what I want to buy." So, um, that is something I'm like trying to make people a bit cautious about. I would rather people look at more like referrals and influencer campaigns. Like if you pay an influencer, like your dollar value would be way more useful if an influencer is like, just read this book, it's amazing. That's going to have greater sales potential than dumping money into like Google ads because I can promise you I've not bought a book from a Google ad at all.
Oh, yeah, that reminds me. We were going to talk about kind of the Wild West of publishing and what to look at. I mean, obviously, I'm highly recommending Megan at TSPA to my followers and know that you're trustworthy and you deliver. I've seen you take numerous books to market successfully and make them Amazon bestsellers, and people are very happy. What are sort of the what do you have people look for? What do you recommend them looking for? Both the pros and the cons. Like, what are some signs that it is legit and a good deal? And what are some signs that you should run the other way? Hi, kiddo.
Um, Signs that a business is like legit. Hang on, wait a minute. I'm gonna pause
It's
this
totally
because I
okay.
feel
No,
like
no,
you're
no
gonna
worries.
face.
Stephanie, are you there? I see someone else in the room with the video. I was just
Okay,
curious.
sorry.
No
Sorry.
worries.
Okay, I'll hopefully have made that easy to splice. Okay, so ways that we can find out and you can explore whether a company is a really good fit for you for publishing is that do they look online like they're upholding the same standards that you would hold for that you want to see from your book? Because if you go onto their social media and if you're impressed by their content, if you see them talking about other authors in a polished and well-branded way, it means that they probably know marketing really well. It means that they know how to talk about authors and their stories, and they're not just like slapping things on Canva and like auto scheduling it to go out. So use a gut check and be like, am I impressed by this? And if you find yourself like, maybe I think I have to be convinced, then, there might be something there that you need to look more closely at. The second thing I would look at is like how many bells and whistles is a company offering? Is it just like you get so much with us. You're going to get these ads and this ad, and you're going to get us like a landing page, and you're going to get this. Like the more that something offers, like that doesn't necessarily mean that there's like it's the zero to hero experience. It might just mean that they're putting lipstick on a cow. So it's like with more like tinsel in its hair. I don't know. So, sometimes like simple, like keeping it clean and keeping it simple is something to look for. And then the last piece I would say is like go and look, are there Google reviews? And like it's simple. Like just go and see what people are saying on Google. Go not only looking at their social media, but go and see the posts that people have tagged that account in. because then you start to see what kind of titles are these books putting out or this publisher putting out. So those are some like really easy high level things that cost nothing to look at when you're comparing businesses. In some cases you do get what you pay for, and in other cases you're getting totally oversold for no reason. So sometimes like I said, it's unregulated, so it's hard to say. If it's not as if you spend $30,000, it's going to guarantee you anything. But
No, but I also like, I mean, people are going to make their own decisions. Like I said, some people are going to pay for the big brand, like having Forbes on their spine, and that's fine. That might be really important to them and their clientele for whatever reason. Other people are going to realize that it doesn't matter, or they can create their own little imprint within an imprint. What I love about TSPA is their a la carte option, because there are definitely people who I work with who are coming, with a mess or with something that's totally polished, or they have their own book cover because they have a designer in the house at their company or whatever it is, right? So I
hmm,
love that you allow people to pick and
yeah.
choose.
And I think that's what we want. I mean, that's how we've designed
No,
our business. And I would say one last
no.
consideration as people are looking at what's possible for them. It would be, is this a Mexico all inclusive? Do you have to eat at the restaurant every night? Meaning it doesn't matter if you came with your own editor. It doesn't matter if you come with your own designer. This package comes, you're gonna have to, it doesn't matter. You're paying for it no matter what. And if that's the case, that tells me that the service isn't tailored to what an author actually needs because it hasn't been evaluated. They're like, you pay for it all, it doesn't matter, use it or don't. So is it a Mexico all-inclusive business that you're after? Or is it a Four Seasons, let's customize what you need here.
I
So
love that.
that would be
Awesome.
a way to look at different companies.
Is there anything else that we should know from you, Megan?
No, other than no, I mean,
Okay, well, so tell
and
us
I
all the
covered so
ways
much.
to.
I feel like I talk so fast.
No, no, it's good. I love it. Tell us where to find you, all
You
the
can
ways
find
to
us
find you.
across the internet at the Self-Publishing Agency on Instagram and YouTube, the website. And then depending on when authors are looking for anything, if it's between now and June of this year, we've got the Vancouver International Publishing Conference coming to Vancouver. So if anyone is interested in learning from both like people who've have experience in the self-published world and people who are working in the big five publishers, everyone's going to be there. It's basically the industry on the West Coast. So if you've got anybody who's interested, we'd love to see you there.
That is going to be so fabulous and exciting. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Megan, for spending this time with us and sharing your
Sammy, thank
wisdom.
you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Here we go.